Good evening. We're really happy that you all have joined us on the call today, and we have quite an exciting session for you lined up today for the new color theory. Just to introduce ourselves, we are TIFA Working Studios. TIFA Working Studios is a multidisciplinary center for creativity and culture in India, and we host a variety of different events from offline to online. And due to COVID, we've kind of changed the way we operate. So please join us for some of the other sessions that we're doing. We have a virtual art party coming up soon. So that's on the cards. As we proceed with the session today, I'm just gonna lay out some hygiene rules before I get into introducing all of our beautiful speakers and partners for the day. We have a Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen. And you can use the box at any time to type your question out. Unfortunately, the session is structured as a webinar, so we won't have your videos on, but you can always type your question in. And post all the presentations. We can take any of the questions directed to our panelists. So please ask the question to a specific panelist if possible. To begin the session today, I will introduce our partners for the day, which is Petersen. Petersen is a Danish brickworks company which manufactures and sells bricks with an emphasis on excellent craftsmanship. As one of the few brickworks in the world, Petersen Tegel masters in the art of firing brick with coal. The process adds vibrant colors in pale and dark shades to a water-struck brick. More than half of Petersen Tegel's range consists of 100% handmade products, including the world-famous Columba Petersen cover, and also 100% handmade, is a tile product developed for covering roofs and facades. The music that you just heard is actually a song that Petersen commissioned, and it's played on the different Columba bricks, and it's quite a beautiful melody if you heard it when you came into the webinar today. Petersen Tegel was founded in 1791 and has been run by the same family in a direct line ever since. Today, the brickwork exports its products all around the world, including USA, Japan, Australia, Russia, and several European countries, and they have just come into India, so will be available in India soon as well. These are our partners for the day, so I'll ask to just quickly play a short introduction video at this time. Super. So I'm glad you were able to see this beautiful video that is shot in the Petersen factory, which is close to Copenhagen in Denmark. And I've seen some of these bricks, and it's fascinating to see the range of colors that they are, from blue bricks to yellow bricks. They're bricks that I've never seen. So it's quite fascinating, and I'm really excited to have them present later today. Our first speaker for the day is Tanya Goel. And I've been a big fan of her myself. I have one of her works that we've collected, and it's absolutely beautiful. So I'll just introduce Tanya, and then we can have her on. Tanya Goel's most Tanya Goel's works are notable for their exploration of rigorous abstraction that is deeply invested in the process of their creation. The artist makes her own pigments from a diverse array of materials, including charcoal, aluminum, concrete, glass, soil, mica, graphite, and fossils, and many others sourced from different architecture, demolitions in and around Delhi. She's interested in textures of her pigments as well as their colors, which is a direct result of how they reflect light. Her compositions, noted for their density and complexity, are mathematical formulas which are established and then violated, resulting in a balance between structure and chaos. Goel's paintings can also be read as linguistic systems, as meanings are constructed only through laborious repetition. So I'd invite Tanya to please turn on her camera and come and present her project for the day. Pratika, if we could have her screen shared as well, please.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Tanya, you are. Over to you.
So hi everybody, the last 10 years I've been based in Delhi where I have my studio, and a large part of what we do with the studio is basically observe and make studies of color based on material and light. We have a color lab set up at the studio where essentially I'm making my own paint, and I think it was about around 15 to 16 years ago when I discovered that what makes paint is a very simple thing. It's taking any pulverized material, which is a pigment, and mixing it with any kind of binder, which gives you paint. So since then, I've been sort of invested in looking at a lot of non-traditional art materials into making my own pigment, which informs a lot of my work. The image that we have in front of us is basically a project that has been, again, ongoing for the last 10 years, which is titled The Archive of Dust. The Archive of Dust sort of looks at color as an architectural archive, where what I've been doing over the last, decade since I've been in Delhi is collecting a lot of demolition from architectural sites which were built in between the 1950s and 80s that are being rapidly demolished currently. So what we do, could we play the presentation, please? Change the slides. Oh, that's from. So sorry, this is a unrelated image. It's gone to fault lines. So speaking about, here we go. So what we can see here is a lot of studies that have been done with color that I've made from bricks and cement and different samples collected from different sites, which kind of chart the time and the period of this socialist modernist history. So in a sense, they become an archive of a disappearing moment in Delhi. What's interesting about these is that, even though the materials are the same, the color is never quite the same because of the way the material is aged or the different sources of, soil that went into it. So that's something. Could we have the next image, please? So these are a few images from my current project, which is up at the Philadelphia Museum of Art as part of Fault Lines, an exhibition curated by Amanda Stroker. For Fault Lines, I looked at different variants of indigo pigment that I studied at the Indigo Museum in Ahmedabad. And could we have the next image? Oh, the images are skipping back and forth. Could we have the Fault Lines indigo images, please?
Sorry, just a second. It was glitching, so she's going to restart it.
So for the Fault Lines project, I'll start talking about it in the meantime. What I looked at essentially was a very old process that was used to measure the level of the sea in order to construct or start an architectural building. And are we getting the images, Trishna?
Yeah, she's just pulling it up. 1 second, it glitched. You can continue saying, just give her 1 second. You can continue speaking in the meantime.
Okay. So the drawing is essentially made with thread dipped in indigo pigments. And what I've used is a variety of indigo pigments from synthetic to natural and a lot of different mixtures, along with a newer addition of brick dust, which was collected in Dhaka. Can we skip to fault lines? Yep. So here you can see, can we go to the next image, please? So essentially what happens with fault lines is that we, three people, create this work by, it's a performative work that sort of records the residue of the performance. And the pigment that, we sort of strived to make for this particular drawing had to be it had to be very powdery in nature for it to be able to, reflect and refract, and at the same time, not be, just sort of stay on the wall as dust, but not entirely come off the wall either. Can we have the next image? Tishta, I'm open to taking questions.
Yes, we can do it like that as well.
Yeah.
So I've seen smaller studies of this work while you were building it. So I just wanted to know, the pigment that you're using for this is indigo?
Yes, it's indigo pigment, and it's basically different variants of indigo pigment. There's natural indigo, the synthetic indigo, and it's a combination of different, indigo is a very interesting pigment because it fades over time. So this drawing is essentially, over the next 6 months that it's going to be up, it will slowly start fading.
And I know you've done this work in very many different scales, and the one at the Philadelphia Museum, if I'm not mistaken, was about 30 feet long. So I'm just curious about a little bit about the process of how do you kind of look at scalability of these works?
So the work is site sensitive in the sense that it responds to the architecture of the space. And at the Philadelphia Museum it was responding to a solid drawing, which is in the foyer right outside this particular room. So this, the proportions are, taken, as you can see, keeping the architecture of the space in mind. What this work does is it charts the global sea level. If you can go into a zoom up of the next file. And this wave that you see is a frequency chart of how the water level has been rising and falling over the last 2 decades.
Oh, that's pretty fantastic. And I know that these works have been evolving for the last few years, because I saw the first few studies, I think about 5 years ago. So and those were tiny ones, I think, at Exhibit 320.
Yeah, so it's been, I think this is Index 5, and it's the final rendition of this work. And I started the project in sort of 2012, which was the first rendition, which was in Bombay. And, each sort of line marks the water level. So that's, yeah.
Super. Pratik, can we have the images with the bricks that were collected from the demolition sites? And Tanya, if you could speak a little bit about that work. I know those are found objects that you kind of intervene with as well.
So what we're seeing here is a chart which is documenting a lot of the bricks that Mazharul Islam used in his work in Dhaka, which is a project that I was involved in the last 6 months or 1 year before 2020, and the sort of pandemic hit us. And what you're seeing here is, like I said, fragments from a lot of socialist modernist architecture that is being currently demolished in Delhi, which came under Nehru's plan for envisioning Delhi as a sort of more utopic and futuristic city. So these are fragments, rubble collected from these buildings.
And Tanya, you had, when I was over at your studio, I remember you mentioning kind of how you're looking at color also as a historic element. And I was wondering if you could shed some light, because these are pigments that you develop on one hand, and yet it's working with found objects that has a color and that kind of ages over multiple decades as well.
So I think when I started off my study with color, I was looking at a lot of miniature paintings and working with a lot of different sort of guilds of miniature painting that still exist in Delhi. And that's really what prompted my sort of interest in making my own color. But I think there are a lot of limitations when it comes to finding these historic pigments, mostly because they're impossible to source now, and it's difficult. And also I wanted to speak to sort of a more industrial landscape that we resided in Delhi. So I think it was very important for me to use a lot of, convert a lot of materials that I was finding in my everyday into these, into color.
Super. And Pratika, if we could have the next body of work, which is the canvases. So I know, Tanya, that was one of your most recent shows that you had in New York. And it kind of looks at color, but it also looks like pigmentation. Sorry, the screen seems to be glitching a little bit with the images. Yes, here we go. Okay, so this was from your recent show in New York. And if you could just talk a little bit about, because I feel like this is a transition from where your earlier works, which were more kind of systematic, and this one starts to get a little bit more chaotic in the way that you look at your work.
So this is a work titled Mechanisms 6, and it's from my ongoing Mechanism series, where essentially I start off by drawing a grid onto a canvas, and we use an algorithm. The algorithm sort of records, is based on material, and it's a series set of materials that we narrow down and repeat over and over again until the algorithm kind of starts to erode it itself. And so what we get is actually glitch is an appropriate sort of thing that was happening on the screen, because what we get is a pattern that glitches as we repeat each layer. And in here, the color that you use has all been made with a lot of sort of plastic, a lot of dyes used in the textile and plastic industry. So that's something that I've also been looking at.
Okay, that's fantastic. As Pratika plays a few more images, I'd like you to talk briefly about, because I know you talk a lot about color and light and their conversation together, and it's not color in itself, but how it kind of maybe has a playfulness and a back and forth in that way.
Well, color is both light and material at the same time, and it's very difficult to separate the two. So what I've been invested in is also looking at how I can sort of manipulate the surface of what I'm going to be applying the color on, or how to sort of manipulate the particle size of the pigment. So how it refracts and how light passes through the particle will inform how the color reflects. So it's a lot of different things. And I think what really interests me most about color is that it's continually, optical, and it's more sort of elusive properties, which are very difficult to, classify. And, a lot of times when I look at, we refer to Pantone charts at times, and I always wonder how they manage to get such a systemized system, because it's so difficult to read color with the light continuously changing.
Yes, that's true. And I know in different environments, it can appear as completely different colors, both indoors and outdoors. And I know you're currently working on a color archive of sorts. And if you could shed a little bit light of what your interest is there, and what exactly you're thinking of doing.
So the first few images that I showed is where the color takes on the form of a sort of it becomes a sort of documentation of a period of Delhi that doesn't quite exist anymore. So it takes on a very a role of an archive in that sense. And that's something that I've been working on, which is a material archive. So it holds a certain instead of just taking photographs of these demolished sites, I thought it would be a lot more interesting to take the actual physical material and breaking it down into pigments, and painting these little charts which document where which material came from, and it becomes then a study of each different site via color.
I think that's absolutely fascinating, because it kind of draws from architecture, draws from color, draws from light, yet it's kind of a historical timeline of sorts to document history of color in a certain sense. It sounds so intangible, but it feels quite real in the way that you're thinking about it. Can you hear me, Tanya?
Yeah, sorry, no, I didn't hear the last question.
So it wasn't a question, but I was just like, it seems like there's a timeline of color that you're trying to create and a kind of historical narrative of color, which I feel is very unique and it's not something that we see very often. So wanted to hear a little bit about that.
I think it's historical in the sense that it's I'm very interested in how we can sort of look at things which are not literal. And I think that one of the things that color can do is sort of take away from the more literal representation of things. So, when I was making this, when I'm sort of working on this archive, it becomes a very abstracted form of looking at something. If you do look, if you're looking at, it sort of talks about how the site has lost its identity and its form when you break a material down and pulverize it into really fine dust and particle. So that is, I think what really interests me is that it can sort of talk about things without actually, being a part of the form.
Fantastic. And we have one question from Roshan, which asks why the fascination with indigo and why did you choose indigo for the Frog Clients project? Is that the representation of the sea?
No, I think I was very interested in the sort of sort of India's past and how indigo became a part of our sort of culture. And I think it's something I was very interested in. The other thing about indigo is it's one of the most unstable pigments and it fades over time. And that was something that really fascinated me. So the work is ephemeral and, over the next 6 months, it will fade out completely.
And as we have this last image, I know this from your news body work, which was actually presented during COVID. So if you can share a little bit about this video piece, which it is, I'm not sure if this image is a video, but.
So this is from the most recent show titled Pause in a Flicker. And what these actually are is they're still the digital drawings for lenticular prints. And I think what was most, so it's essentially a lenticular print which overlaps imagery of different sort of modernist architectural buildings across different places, and then overlaps it with drawings of my paintings. And so what they're actually meant to be videos and not static images here. Can we play a video of it perhaps?
Radhika, can you try and see if there's a video available? Okay, there we go. And this was presented in an online viewing room, so it was viewed digitally, but I think it would be super interesting to see the lenticulars themselves because it's such an interesting medium as well.
Yeah, what's most interesting is that, in order for the work to be completed, requires the viewer to move around it. And so one of the goals in the viewing room was to be able to create that same sensation of movement and opticality.
Super. Tanya, we're running out of time for your session, so I'm going to move forward to Mia's and we'll come back in the panel discussion and take the other questions.
Yeah.
If anyone does have questions for Tanya, please ask them the Q&A and we can take them in the next panel discussion. Thank you so much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you.
Yeah.
Next, we have Mia. Mia Morikawa is the co-founder and creative director and brand strategist for the brand 1111. It was founded in 2009 and is led by her and Shani Himanshu. Renowned for their use of indigenous cotton and 100% natural dyes, the label uses heritage techniques such as handloom weaving, hand painting, miniature, tie-dyeing, and quilting. The label maintains its unique handmade vision by departing from mainstream manufacturing, producing small batch, slow-made clothing in a collaboration with groups of artisans located all across India. Each season, the brand dissolves distinctions between geographic and gender boundaries. The looks are safe for skin and transition seamlessly between cultures from day to evening wear. So it's my absolute pleasure to invite Mia for the session today to present her work. I own multiple pieces by 1111 and I absolutely love wearing them. So over to Mia. Mia, we can have your video as well. Super. Radhika, can we have her presentation?
Hi, Trishla. Yeah, so I'm presenting today our sort of color perspective. We make garments, and so there are different sort of ways to apply color to fabric, and we'll go through a few of those ways in this presentation. If we think about what it takes to make a garment, there are many ingredients, including fiber and processes which include weaving, and then the application of color is kind of another layer in the process of making a garment. And the way that we work with color is through natural dyeing, and the natural dyeing process happens in a remote location in a village in near Pondicherry, about 90 kilometers outside of Pondicherry. And here you can see the color translates onto fabric from this wood piece is a root from a tree called sapanwood, and it's then pulverized into a powder and is then dip dyed. The fabric is dipped into a vat. And we have mainly explored indigo as a color. In the previous slides, we've seen ochre and pinks, but the color that we've had sort of the deepest engagement with is indigo. And indigo is interesting because it's sort of a collaboration with microbiology. You know, you have these communities of bacteria that live in the vat, and it's really a process of, in order to get, you know, positive results out of the collaboration, conditions to create, you know, thriving life within that vat need to happen. So that involves feeding the bacteria and keeping the right temperature, the right pH, and that happens through the additions of sugar in the form of date or fructose, and the addition of lime, proper temperature, and time. Here we can see the actual indigo leaf. Here it's green, and in order to harness the energy of indigo, it needs to be cut, and within 2 hours of it getting cut, it needs to be submerged into water, and the fermentation process and creating indigo cakes, which can then be stored and used later, needs to start from 2 hours of getting cut. This is kind of the film on top, and you can see you know, chemical reactions of calcium coming to the surface on that film. This is one of our artisans, and we pretty much, this is fabric, and this fabric can either get dipped into the fabric, or there's another way which fabric can get dyed, and that's through yarn dyeing. So in this case, the whole fabric itself will get submerged into the vat. And here we can see the yarn getting dyed. And as the yarns go into the indigo, this sort of green color comes up, but as oxygen kind of hits the indigo, it then gets that blue color. So through this process of repeating the dips and continuously exposing the fabric and the indigo to oxygen, with more dips, we can get a deeper color. And the process is very much affected by the weather. If the weather is hotter, then the dips and the dyes can happen faster. And in cold weather, that process is slowed down. So indigo is, the process of indigo is deeply affected by the weather conditions. Here we have one of our artisans, our miniature tie-dye artisans, and she's just wrapping some thread to create a tie-dye effect. And once this process is complete of tying the fabric, then it'll be dipped into the fabric. This is the work of a particularly skilled artisan. You can see that the texture here is very dense, and the effect once it's been dyed is quite incredible. Here you can see the fabric texture has that bondini, that miniature tie-dyed surface, and once the thread is removed, it'll reveal a white space where the thread previously was. You can see the finished garments are here, and on the right we see silk, and the two on the left are cotton garments. So depending on the structure of the fiber, the dye will kind of saturate in different ways. Indigo is pretty, as Tanya was saying, unstable and unpredictable, and one of the exciting and endlessly mysterious things about it is that it just has so many different shades and forms, and it bleeds and it fades. And here, this is one of our favorite fiber and dye pairings. It's indigenous cotton with natural indigo. And I mean, in gardening, they say what grows together goes together. And yeah, this pairing so far in all of our sort of explorations, this organic cotton and natural indigo go very well together, respond well to each other in conversation. We work with communities that are pretty located in rural areas, and you know, part of you know, fabric and color are also relate to the terroir of the location. A certain locality might grow indigo, and a certain location might have, you know, pomegranates, and so depending on what material is available, it's likely that those colors will be reflected in the dress of those communities, or in the history of those communities. All of the colors that we use are natural, so most of the ingredients here we can see natural indigo, pomegranate, sapanwood, jaggery, which is like a palm sugar, and those elements. You can even see milk there that's used. Everything is almost edible and very safe for the skin. Our most recent way of applying color is through paint, and these garments are hand painted by a community of ladies in Srikalahasti, which is in the south of India. And yeah, this is painting with indigo. So rather than just dipping or dyeing the yarns, this is a hand-painted application of indigo using the indigo flower, which is that top frothy part of the indigo. These are the hand painting artisans that we work with. And we reached the end of the presentation here, and part of our process is kind of identifying value and to each, piece of material that we use. And at the end of the process of making fabrics, we have a lot of scraps, and the tiniest scraps at the end of the process then get pulped in water and then pressed into handmade paper. So the color that you see on this paper here is just a transference of color that got naturally dyed onto fabric. And
thank you so much, Mia. That's such a beautiful story and journey through the because I wear some of these outfits that they and thank you so much for showing and sharing that with us. We will move on. So thank you so much, Mia.
thank you, Trishna.
Next, we have Melina Bach, and I'll invite Melina to come on at this point while I introduce her. Melina Bach is a visual artist born in Denmark in 1967. Melina Bach's work explores perception in the conditional in art, often through site-specific, colorist, and architectural invention. And scales, moving fluidly. In her in-situ works, she explores and evolves in the dialogical and dynamic process, barring the potentiality of specific sites, working artistically and coloristically in and with architecture, material, spatial, and architectonic. Melina Bach's studio works are represented in private and public collections, and Melina has been a recipient of several grants and awards. So super to have you, Melina. Melina, if I could just request you to take your camera a little closer to you so we can see you a bit better, maybe.
Like this. I'm losing a lot of your voice.
I can't hear you.
I am also losing a lot of your voice.
I can hear you just fine now.
Okay, but I don't hear you very well, so.
To you now, so it's your time to present. I will ask Pratika.
Okay. So, can you hear me now? Because I'm out of connection with anybody. Okay. Thank you for this invitation to participate in your new color theory. I think we all already have a sketch for a summing up of the new color theory, looking at what the two beautiful projects that we saw before. I see that they were also working with the color as a material. And we all use color as a cultural, to create a cultural connection through color. And that is actually very interesting, that I think all of us participants talking today work with color in a sense where color is creates meaning and not just as an application layer. And I'm a visual artist and I work with the site-specific colors and art in architecture. Often I collaborate with the architects, and I'm going to present 4 projects very quickly, showing different types of work. And the first you see here is a Romanesque church in Denmark. It's a collaboration with a restoration architect, Leif Hansen, and the church space has been reinterpreted and rearranged all the interior in the space in order to get closer to the original space of the church. And what we did here was also to create this tile that you see on the floor. It's a large scale version of an old Renaissance tile that we specifically designed for the church. And in the different spaces of the church, we can create different patterns with the same with this one tile. It's one shape, and what it does to the space is it's the texture, the color, and the pattern that adds a softness and decorative ambience in this simple traditional church space. And by underscoring and emphasizing textures, various textures of different materials, the space itself and the materials and objects itself in the church become like a full decoration without adding any artistic elements. And also, if you go back to the, then you would see also that we have colors of benches and other objects are trying also reinterpretation of traditional colors using, of course, traditional materials on the surfaces. Okay, so you can go to the next project, please. Yeah, so this is a different context. This is a university in Copenhagen, and this is a skywalk, and it's 39 meters long. And what we see here is standing on the street, looking up towards the bottom facade of the skywalk. The pattern, the composition that we see here, if we go to the next image, yes, you will see that this pattern underneath the skywalk is exactly the same pattern, which is inside the linoleum floor. So it connects, it creates a connection between inside the building and outside the building. But you would never understand both parts of the project at the same time. So some people would only see one part, other people would only see the outside part, and maybe someday people would connect it if they know both parts, but maybe not. And if you go back again to the first image, no, yeah, thank you. Then also the structure of the geometry here is also a structure that actually is an extension of the structure of the facade, glass facade panels. So this is also an art project that kind of enhances the architecture which is there, and adds a new kind of layer to the structure of the architecture. Okay, so now you can go on. Yeah, and this is a project in Zurich. It's a new office building with 3 floors, and what happens here is that the 3 floors would have 3 different views. You can go to the next, and the next image. Yeah. So on each floor you have a different view, and the view that's too fast. And the view go back, please. The colors from the view is integrated on the floor. So the palette consists of 4 colors, and each floor has a domination of one of the colors, which is the color that you would see outside. So again, if you go back to the first, please. Again, then you would see, you would have the view, and you would have the floor, and the inside and the outside connects. And the technique that I use here is it's concrete casted floor, and we use a new technique that we developed for this floor, which so the color kind of soaks into the concrete, leaving the traces of casting and the method of casting, leaving this visible. So, and we call it kind of a concrete fresco, because it's it looks like a very old kind of fresco painting, but of course it's actually new. And you can go to the next one. Yeah, here you would also see. Okay, you could go to the next, please. Yeah, and here you would also see more detailed how it works. This technique on this surface, and the reason, maybe now you can go to the next one, then I can say a little bit more about this color and context. Yeah, so this is a project in Pune. It's called, it's outside Pune actually. It's called Apsara Academy, and it's a collaboration with the case design, architects case design in Mumbai. And the reason I want to speak about color and context is, if you go to the next one. Next, please. Yeah. Okay, so here we are inside. Oh, too fast. Back again, please. Inside the building. And when, yes, thank you. Inside the building, we would always see the landscape surrounding in the surroundings, because the building is open all around. So the landscape surrounding the building has, you know, there are colors there. So the colors inside the building should work with the landscape outside, because I think often what makes architecture interesting is also how you connect with the surroundings by being inside the building. And this building is it's in it works with the traditional colors from Indian architecture, and we use the traditional pigments that have been used in India for decades to paint buildings. And the girls in this school, they would come from different parts of India. Do I have to stop now? Different parts of India, and they would recognize. You could go further on the images now, please.
Alina, you have 1 minute, so if you could
okay.
wrap up.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. So just I just want to say that you can also go to the next images. That the important thing about the color and the context and how the color connects with culture is because it creates a connection that makes sense. That color is bound to a deeper layer than just, you know, like an additional application of a design approach. So yeah, there is a lot more to say, but you have to study the projects maybe on the websites or other places.
Super, thank you so much, Melina. I know it's a very short time to kind of go over the entire span of the practice that you have, but hopefully we can take some questions during the Q&A and go a little deeper into some of them. But thank you so much for sharing your work with us. Next, we will invite Petersen. Peter, if we could have you on the screen. Okay, hi. I have introduced Petersen before, so you know kind of the spectrum of what Petersen does, but to quickly summarize that, Petersen is a Danish brickworks which manufactures and sells bricks with an emphasis on excellent craftsmanship. Even today, it's still one of the few factories across the world that makes 100% handmade products They worked with some of the most prominent artists and architects from across the world. And I will invite Peter, who is an architect himself with Petersen and leads multiple different projects with Petersen, to share a little bit more about the different kind of bricks that Petersen makes. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Trisha. Welcome to Denmark, I could say, to everyone. It's really nice having you here in our living room. Let me see, I'll just try to share my screen here. This should be this one. That should be all right. Just a short introduction. Our world is a completely different world than the very interesting three worlds we've heard about before and seen some very nice projects. It's truly fascinating. Our world is also based on nature. It's based on the soil that we have around us. So this is what I'm going to do an introduction to. Let me just see if I can do that. Just a short introduction to us. As you mentioned, Krishna, our factory is from 1791. In 230 years almost, in one family, situated in the same position or on the same side, as you can see below here, near the water in southern Denmark. And this is very much our world. It's clay, basically clay. And the production idea of making bricks is hundreds, thousands of years old. And it's been the same ever since. And basically, we didn't get much further at our factory than that. We produce bricks, to put it very shortly, as you already know, of all kinds of colors and all kinds of sizes. And also that being the theme today, I will get more into that. Color is very much our landmark, our main feature, the color play. This just to show you basically how you do a brick. This picture you see here could be taken, not technically, but could be like 500 years ago. You put a lump of clay into a mold, you let the lump drop out of the mold, and you basically have some clay that you can dry and you can burn afterwards. And this is the way we do it in a modern way. Actually, this is the 9th generation of the family on this image. He's working full-time in the production, so it's very much family history. And this is what we deal with, basically. Clay in all kinds of types. And, well, you could basically say clay is clay, but it isn't. You have different kinds of clay, different colors, different qualities technically, that result in different types of bricks. Just to give you a few images of the atmosphere and the way it is at the factory. It is a very entertaining place in many ways. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of clay and mud, and a lot of bricks being moved back and forwards. And this is basically also our worlds that we are dealing with. And even the bricks that are discarded and recycled have something for us, because our passion is and will always be bricks. This is just a flush of what we call our normal bricks. And when you look at this, you can perhaps get the idea of, or I hope that you can get the idea why we are participating here, because color is, again, our thing. Now, all this that you see here is a result of the choice of clay that we use and the way we dry them, the way we burn them, and even the way we mold the brick. Now, just to let you in on a little detail regarding the brick industry, clay that comes from nature, it's either going into a yellow brick or into a red brick, meaning that you cannot find, for instance, a black or gray brick like what you see here from nature. You need to burn them a second time. Something called a blue tempering process. So you can just imagine the rules that are in the brick industry, that you have two basic sorts, colors of clay, the red burning and the yellow burning clay, and then you have all kinds of ways to mix and to burn them a different time to achieve all these colors. And then the fuel, which is also a thing. Now I will show you a few examples because given the fine introduction to this lecture day, which is that we live in a colorful world, I would like to show a few images to show you how this very muddy, how this very dirty and rough industry turns into something that we, and hopefully also the world around us, and architects find pleasing. This year is the Fjordenhus by Olafur Eliasson in Vejle, which is an example of how you can take a completely normal brick in a lot of different colors and mix it. So you basically have the same ground material, but you can mix it and you can change the colors and use it in different combinations to achieve all kinds of effects. Your eye will probably catch that there are some reflection on some of these images, and those are glazed bricks. Also a thing that you can do. Although it's only clay, it's a world of inspiration that lies at our feet, we think. This year is actually just a summer house in Denmark, but it basically shows how you can achieve, with a very subtle, a very discreet implementation of brick colors, a quite strong architectural effect. Designed by an architect called Tage Lyneborg and an artist called Bjørn Nørgaard a few years back. Now, it doesn't always have to be colorful as such. This is the Basel Art Museum, where you can see this gray building built in basically normal bricks, but you can see there is a color fade, which is a change in colors going from gray at the top to black, almost black at the bottom. So there are different, color scales you can work with. Now, a more powerful example, if you want full speed on the colors, this is in Amsterdam by a company called Platform Architects. They designed this building in a row of Amsterdam houses, just to say that it doesn't necessarily need to be, for instance, you can see that the mortar between the bricks here is red. That is a different language. You don't necessarily need to follow the rules all the time in brick work. Now, just a short story. A few years ago, there was an architect from Switzerland called Petersen who changed our life significantly when he designed the Columba Museum in Cologne, which is a good example of how a conservative industry suddenly sees a new opportunity. Now, Sumthor, he wanted a very long brick, which we developed, or Christian Petersen, the head of the company today, and my father-in-law, he developed in a very short conversation with Peter Sumthor. Now, this is a good example of a brick that just starts in one color, and then an architect from Denmark, Goel, comes and designs and wins a competition for a new theater in Copenhagen. And he goes to the factory, sees this gray brick from the Columba Museum here, and asks, does it come in black? And that is sort of the way that new colors develop. Okay, let's see if we can do it in black. We'll find the right clay and move on. And this is also to give you an idea of how colors and bricks can be used in interior design. And here also the surfaces. Very much you see what might just be a black brick. It's basically just a matter of clay with different burnings and different types of clay used in the production when they slide out of the molds. Just a rainbow, you could say, with the brick colors. Again, it's only clay, it's not magic, and it's only made by hands. It's made in wooden molds. I can actually just show you. Wooden molds, if you can see me on the image, would be this one. This is an actual wooden mold from the factory. And they have all kinds of shapes, of course, depending on what bricks you want. Again, this is for an art project in Copenhagen, how to use colors in something as traditional and boring as bricks. It's just a matter of imagination. And just nearing the end, from time to time, new things happen. And this was some Dutch architects that wanted tiles on the roof without mortar. So basically a complete house clad in tiles. So we had this one developed. And here you can see the effect, the color effect, when you blend into a historical site using that brick in a slightly larger version and completely over the building. This building, when you enter this city space, it's very, gives an impression on you. Although right in front of it you have the church, the major church of the city. So this makes a complete city room, a city space, which is very much complete because of those colors. Here's a closer picture, the handmade, but rather large. It's to just give an explanation of how you can work with the fantasy. Contemporary architecture, contemporary setting, the new metro ring in Copenhagen, handmade product, again used in a high-tech combination of high-tech scene, and different station in the same circle line with handmade gray brick. These colors represent the colors from the street level that are sort of pulled down into the metro line to represent what you have above ground. And then basically we have a lot of production of special tiles, customized tiles, glazed and made for all kind of buildings. You can see I have some examples here on my table, even colored ones. This one is a, maybe you can see it's a blue one, not even glazed. It's actually an unglazed brick. And here you can see an example of how you can work with glazed bricks and use the colors as a strong contrast in the space of a city. This is in the United States. And here, just to show you again, this is my last image, the way the things work at the factory. This is Eric, who's in charge of our special department, who is working and develop these colors based on the architect's wish. So it's basically very traditional and very old. It's really old news, but still you can move forward when doing that. Now I have a very short video which I could present to you if we have the time, but I believe that we are sort of running short. It's a 1 minute video.
Petersen, Peter, you can play the video. You have exactly 1 minute left, so it works out.
This is an image. Let's just see if I can share a different thing here.
You can just hit escape on your screen.
Yeah. Find the video.
Okay, yeah, find the video and you can reshare your screen.
To pop up here.
Okay, now you can go back to Zoom and share your screen.
Screen, yeah. Can you see something?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is basically how you produce a brick traditionally. It explains the technique behind it. Now, of course, here you cannot see the color of the clay, but this will eventually turn into a red brick. But it basically explains the whole idea about it. And that is what we find so interesting. You have this very simple technique with such old materials, and still you can achieve such strong effects in architecture if you have the right ideas, which are in the heads of the architects. Because we don't come up with the colors and the bricks ourselves, normally. The architects that do that. So these were my words. The last 25 seconds of this video will just explain themselves. And I think thank you. And let me just mention that should you ever want to hear more, we have this terrific guy called Ichandir in India who will be able to help you. But we will get back to that perhaps.
Super.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for that presentation. I'm quite awed by the different range of colors that Petersen always seems to get right. I would never imagine a blue and a yellow brick, so it's pretty fascinating. This brings us to an end of the presentations for the day. So I would like to invite all the speakers back on to our webinar to do a quick 15-minute Q&A with our audiences. This is also a cue to all of you watching. If you have any questions, I know some of them have started to come in, but if you have any questions that are overarching about color, please do ask them in the Q&A section below. Peter, I will start with you since we have you on the screen while we wait for the other speakers to come back on. I can just turn my video on here. So I know that Petersen has been around for a long time, but I feel like this is a very traditional medium, but it's coming back in a huge way. So I just want to learn from you because I know you customize even one brick, as you say. So kind of what are collaborations that you've done that have been super interesting for you to kind of look upon the customizations because you're a handmade company?
Sorry, I have to be quite sure of the question.
So what are some of the collaborations that you've worked with? Because you're a handmade company and you do make limited edition kind of bricks. So it's very artistic in that way because it's not completely mass produced all the time.
It's funny because basically it's just a really traditional business, the brick business. But we have been lucky to have been working with many architects, and these are architects all over the world. More than 40 different countries in our portfolio. But what's interesting for us is to have the architect and also the artist, because we have a lot of collaboration with artists also from all over the world, to have them collaborate directly. The best thing is if the architect or the artist has a project and comes to us directly to the factory to explain it, to see it, and even to try to make a brick. So we even had the Australian architects, we had all the European countries. We're still waiting for an architect from India to come and visit us, but I hope that will come soon. But they come and they have their ideas, and we exchange ideas, and we also need to be moved from time to time to have somebody say, "Can I do this?" And then find out, "Oh yes, it's definitely possible. We can go with that. We cannot do that." So the collaborations are with the architects, with the artists, and with the even the building owners and the authorities. It's very wide and it's very open-minded.
Super, fantastic. We have all of our other speakers here as well. So we're going to switch to a gallery view so everyone can see all the other speakers. And I'm going to take the first question. If Sid can pull it up, or I can ask it while he pulls the question up. So I'll start with the first question, which comes to Petersen, which is, what is the temperature of that you fire your normal bricks at for the second time? I know it's quite a technical question, and maybe your IP, so you can think about whether you want to give it away or not. And is it a coal-fired process?
Yeah. No problem. The temperatures are approximately around 1,000 degrees, a little less, and go up to 1,100 degrees, maybe 1,200 degrees being the absolute top. But that is also a question of which plate types. Different plate types react in different ways on different temperatures. Now, regarding the color play, we use for the standard bricks like this one here, we use a charcoal, or basically just coal, and for the long bricks like the Columba bricks, which we have here, for those we burn with gas, because it is a quite difficult process to burn those equally and without them twisting like noodles, you would say.
That sounds super interesting. I like the comparison to the noodles. It makes me hungry.
Sorry for that.
No, that's fine. I'm going to take the next question, which comes in for Melina. And it's quite interesting because I've heard her talk about this, is how does culture inform coloring choices and applications? And I know that because you travel and work in different geographies, this is something that you're quite sensitive to. Melina, if you could just, you're on mute.
Hi.
There we go. Hi.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was, one second, where did, sorry, my bad. How does color inform color choices and application in the current context?
So that is the research of each site. I mean, each site is in a different geographical context or cultural context. It could be either the place or the architecture or the history around the town or the country. It can be any scale, you could say, of context. So this is where I find the material, the colors, and the materials, and it's it's of course an inspiration and a research and an exercise, but it's always, of course, directed by my artistic interests and intentions. And what you say?
Yeah. Malene, I'm just going to ask a quick question that someone had raised earlier is, was the color painted on the concrete when the concrete was wet? I think that refers to the work that you'd shown as the second project.
It has to. And we created the technique, the color technique, with pigments and white cement and a binder. So we could paint it directly on the concrete ceilings without any preparations. So it was only one coat of paint. And of course it had to be wet, because otherwise, I mean, if we work with lime, you need to make it wet, otherwise it would come off afterwards.
Yes, definitely. So I have a question actually for all of the speakers from Roshan, and I think it's quite interesting for us in the way that we curated this session was really to look at how different practitioners from such different fields, from architecture to fine art to design to textiles, kind of use and imbibe color in their own way. And I know a lot of you also think about psychology of color and also the aging of color. So the question is quite straightforward, is what is your favorite color and why? And kind of how much do you use it in your practice, and why do you use it in that way? Or what is its potential in a way? Maybe we can start with Tanya and then move in the order that we presented.
Hi, Trishta, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I think that's a question that I've continually tried to avoid, because the way I look at color is that it's a shifting spectrum, and it's quite impossible for me to look at color, as a relative, as how it cannot be removed. You cannot see red without blue. You cannot see orange without green. So for me, there's no favorite color, because it's all within a shifting sort of spectrum.
It's a very politically correct and diplomatic answer to color, but I love it. Yeah. Mia, okay. If we could have you next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I guess, we're dealing with garments and fabric and the space around the body. So I guess the color which we've explored the most is indigo, but one that has been exciting for us for the past year or so is ochre. And I think it's just because of the vibrancy and the emotional effect of ochre is, it's a mood elevator, it's bright, it's the color of...
And where is this pigment of ochre coming from, Mia?
It comes from pomegranate skin.
Oh, wow, pomegranate skin. Beautiful. Malene, would you like to answer the question as well? You're on mute.
I totally agree with Tanya, because when you work because color is related to light and to context, to scale, to material, to texture. So a color is never the same if you move it into another space, if you put it on another material, or you create another material with color, it will never be the same. And since it's always perceived in a context, the context adds something to the color and vice versa. So all colors can be beautiful or not beautiful, or have different bring different emotions with them according to the context.
Okay, fantastic. Peter, would you like to comment on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. And it's quite interesting, because maybe our rules in architecture are a bit different, because what you say that Mia and Tanya and Malene, what the rules are, is that they depend all the time. But we actually do see some rules, and we see fashions in the brick industry. Personally, in the 90s, when the gray and the black bricks came out, I was quite fascinated by them. But now I'm moving towards the more warm colors, the reddish colors, the deep reddish colors. And that's also because we see more houses that have these colors maybe. But it's more difficult to mix colors completely. So you have like a tone scale. There are certain rules, like if you have like this color of let's say a main building, then you would have the foundation, maybe a traditional color that could be complementary. But you wouldn't suddenly see like a yellow foundation and a black brick house on top. There are some rules that are logical, and of course just waiting to be broken. Well, it's so nice that there are a set of rules that just need to be broken. And I think if you ask me again in 5 years, I might have a different opinion of which color is the favorite.
Okay, super. Tanya, we have a question that's come in for you and twice over, which is about the new digital works that you've done. Is how do you start these works, and what is the kind of process? Are you making the lenticulars first and then transferring them to digital? What is that back and forth exchange for these new works?
So it starts with a photograph. I'm referencing a lot of my photos that I take when I'm normally traveling. And it starts with the photo documentation, and it's a layering of 3 to 4 different photographs. Each photograph has a connection, and each photograph records a period of modernity from a different sort of a geographical location. For example, for these lenticulars, I was looking at the architectural grid of Switzerland versus Dubai, Bangladesh, and India. And then I sort of overlap these images in a very they don't have to be particularly about the architecture, but sometimes, just like a flower that's growing outside the building, or a particular tree, or a particular shadow falling on the wall. And then they're sort of manipulated digitally. So they start with a photograph, then it's digital, and then it becomes a lenticular, takes the form of a lenticular print.
Super, fantastic. I have one other small question for you, which has come in, which is, what do you mix with the dust from the archaeological site to use it with the medium? Do you use paint, or how do you kind of use that texture on your work?
It depends on what is the consistency of the actual final paint that I want it to be, and how reflective, or do you want it to be matte? So you can either use synthetic, you can use oil-based binders, which is what I've used for these the specific brick and cement studies, but a lot of times I'll use a lot of acrylic emulsions as well.
Okay, super. We have one other question that's come in for Peter, which asks about the customized mortar color, and how do you match it to the bricks for the projects that you are asked to do. So maybe to talk about the customization and what are the levels in which the color can be achieved.
Well, of course, we have a set of basic guidelines. I mean, we can only achieve basically the colors that nature gives us, but that has many color tones. An architect would, for instance, come with a particular project and say, I would like this color, and he would point, or she would point at 2 different bricks and say, I want the color right in between. And then we will have to go into the research work. We have one guy at the factory called Kim. The guy would find those kind of answers. And one very fine, what do you call it, example. So she can actually, if I will leave the screen for a second, I'll find something for you.
It's a good thing that he's in his studio, so he can access everything that for us.
By no surprise, I found a brick for you, but some of you would be able to see that this brick is slightly greenish in its color. And the story of this brick is that an architect came with his client and wanted to build a house in the woods somewhere in Belgium. And they had brought a tiny bit of the tree skin, I think it's called bark, we call it in Danish, the skin of the tree, which was with moss on it, so it had this color. And he showed it to the production guys and said, I want this color for my brick. So again, Kim, our clay magician, went into his study chamber and came out with this brick which matched match completely. So it's a matter of coincidences and, of course, a matter of knowledge. You could not achieve a pink brick, for instance, or a purple almost. We almost have a purple brick here. But a pink brick would be difficult without glazing it, for instance. But there are many possibilities within the nature colors, within the burning scale, you could say also.
Super, thank you so much, Peter. I have one question that's coming privately for Mia, which talks about they've tried to use some organic colors, and how do you deal with essentially issues of sun fastening and aging? So how do you kind of work with color that maybe changes over time, and how do you adapt to those changes because they don't function like chemical color in that way? You're on mute, Mia.
Well, I think that most of the audience that we're connected to, they have they connect to the work that we do mostly because they have a yearning to connect their bodies and their minds to something that feels natural. And I think everything in the natural world is constantly in a state of change, of we're all in a state of change. We have organic bodies, and we are aging and we're changing, and fabric and color is the same. So I think being connected to something that feels alive and feels like it's changing, rather than something that just doesn't decompose and doesn't degrade at all, is only natural.
And we have a follow-up question to that, which essentially asks, are there some colors in the textile world that are more sustainable than the others? So maybe an ochre or a madder root compared to an indigo, just as a scale, is it something that that is considered?
Well, one thing that's nice about all of our, like the effluent and the leftover of the colors that we use, everything gets composted, and all of the water is used for local crops. So nothing really gets wasted, but I think the sourcing of the material is quite interesting. Like the pomegranate skin is acquired from, the local juice guy. So all of our systems are connected to the local community, and it doesn't end at any point. It kind of there's just very circular quality about the materials that we use. So I think probably the more sustainable option would be one that uses less water, probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yes, I know the textile industry has become infamous for its use of water.
Yeah, luckily our water is used, for local crops, but I think the less water wasted, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, super. Thank you so much. I would, before we close, I would just love for everyone to quickly share with us, because this entire session was imagined around color and the psychology of color, to really look at it as a multidisciplinary new kind of color theory, because the way that we deal with color as humanity has changed so much. And now that we're going digital, what is also the more immediate need to touch and feel and interact with color so much more. So if all of you could just give us a closing line on maybe your psychology around color, that would be beautiful before we close. And over to, maybe we start with Peter and go the opposite way this time.
Thank you. That's nice. And it's also difficult, and yet not. We should just all enjoy the surroundings we have around us, the buildings, the cities we have around us. And now I see that, for instance, Tanya's textile work is highly fascinating. I will go out on the street and look at textiles in different ways. From now on, Malene, I know your work, and Mia, your work is also it's very inspiring. This is a good set off for the weekend.
Melina, over to you. You're on mute. There we go.
I think color is a lot about feelings. It speaks directly to our emotions, to our soul, and actually it's not possible to grasp color with language. You need to feel it.
Super, that's beautiful. Mia?
Yes, I completely agree. Color is beyond language. It's something definitely, it's like, you know, something that you experience with your senses, like hearing music or tasting something. The sensation is immediate, and you know, either it hits you in your soul and resonates and makes you feel something, or it doesn't. And that color, those colors that resonate are, you know, say something about your self-expression. And I think when we, you know, adorn ourselves with color that really make us feel something, we express ourselves, and that makes us, I guess, more legible to connect to.
Okay, yeah, beautiful. Over to you, Tanya.
I think the most interesting thing about color is that it can operate as both fact and fiction at the same time. And yeah, that is something that's most intriguing.
I love how everyone had different understandings of that. And as we bring this session to a close, I'd just like all our panelists to, maybe Melina, you could step a little bit ahead, because this is our version of taking a group photo of everyone being here. So if we could just all come up, and thank you for all the audience members for joining us today. And if you could send us virtual claps and good energies towards all of our speakers, and we send them back to you in these tough times. And hope you can join us for some other sessions going forward. We will tune back into the music. So if you want to take a few minutes to just go through the chat or take some time to get out of the webinar, please do so and enjoy the music. Thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you to Petersen for being great partners, and all of our speakers.